Hi everyone! In this video I'm going to be showing you the step-by-step process of how I make my pigeon/dove pendants. Do bear in mind, any spontaneous clothing changes you may witness during this filming are due to the process taking about a week in total. Anyway, on to the video. So, I start off by cutting the wire, which will be used to form the base of the pendant. I always cut it longer than I'll need so that there's room for me to make adjustments as needed near the end. I use a strong air-drying modelling clay. This stuff's great because if you don't have the facilities to fire a piece in like a kiln or something, like I don't, you can just use this as an alternative, and I've found it to be just as good, at least for smaller projects. The clay is massaged, pressed and rolled to get rid of any air bubbles. As you can see, I have a pre-made necklace which I use as reference to get the correct shape and size. I use only my hands to model the shape, which as you can see takes quite a lot of patience sometimes. Water is used to help smooth the surface and keep the clay malleable. Once happy with the shape, I use one of my modelling tools to cut the tail into 4 separate feathers. The tail needs to not be too thin in order to maintain its strength. Now I can start making the beak. This bit is quite fiddly, as it requires squashing the head a little, so that needs to be reshaped a few times. I usually cut a small outline for the wings into the sides, then form the bead by simply rolling some more clay. Then use the wire I cut earlier to make the holes for the pendant pieces to slide onto. But my camera cut out before then. Whoops! After being left to dry for 2 days, the pigeon is now ready to paint. I mix a natural grey colour and get to work painting the base paint layer. The acrylic paint is left to dry for a few minutes between each painting step. A lighter grey is mixed and applied to the underbelly of the pigeon. During the whole painting process, I use reference images to make sure the colours and patterns are correct. These are of both real pigeons and previous pendants I've made. While the pigeon's left to dry, I get to work on the bead. A light greyish green is mixed for the base of the bead, the same colour that one of the neck markings will be. Now while that dries, we go back to the pigeon. Using a very dark grey, I start painting the tail feathers. Then I do the same for the wingtips, making sure not to cross over the pre-cut lines of the wings. Then the wings are delicately rimmed with white. And feather shapes added for more detail. Onto the tail again, I add white feather details for a layered effect. Now onto the finer details. I paint on the neck patterns, which in this case are green and white. Next, I add the base layer for the beak in dark grey. This helps give a bit more shape to the face and frames the beak nicely. Yellow eyes are carefully dotted onto the face, followed by even smaller pupils, which I dab on carefully with my teeny tiny brush. The light pink top colour for the beak is then applied. Back to the bead to paint on the darker green pattern. Again, this bit can be quite fiddly. Final touches on the pigeon, little white detailing on top of the beak. When all the painting's done, it's left for an hour to dry. Now that's all done, the protective gloss coat needs to be applied to both parts of the pendant. Now, it says the gloss coat needs at least 24 hours to dry, but I usually leave it for 2 days just in case. When that's all dried, it's time to start assembling this necklace. The wire is bent into a closed loop at the top. Any spare length is cut off now. This is the same thing I did for the foot loop, which is that little pink bit you see under Mr. Pigeon here. Obviously, I need to be a bit more careful with the top, because the beads are attached this time. The chain part of the necklace is fairly simple. Just bend the hoop attachments and slide them, along with the clasp, onto the chain. There we have it! One finished pigeon pendant. So now you know how those are made. If you're interested in getting one made for you, you can find the link in the description below to the listing on my Etsy shop. Thanks for watching, even with my terrible recording voice. Blech.